This video will be a bit different than usual, because there's not much known about this ancient monument, and because the focus isn't necessarily on the unknown history, but the unknown future of this structure. I've mentioned the importance of preservation in the past, and I will keep mentioning it regularly in the future. If we lose a piece of our ancient human history, we also lose a piece of our identity as a species. Unfortunately, the dolmen of Guadalperal, otherwise known as the Spanish Stonehenge, is at risk of completely disappearing from the face of the earth if changes are not made in time. This monument spends most of its time being submerged underwater, and the stones have been eroding at a fast rate. So today, it's time to look into the importance of preservation. My name is Kaylee, forgive me my long intro, let's get into it. The treasure of Guadalperal, the Spanish Stonehenge, the dolmen of Guadalperal. Many names for unique monuments in the province of Cáceres in the autonomous community of Extremadura. This ancient monument was discovered in 1926 during a research and excavation campaign led by German archaeologist Hugo Obermeier. After his death, the German couple George and Vera Leisner took charge in compiling all the documentation that was scattered between the University of Freiburg and the Alba estate. They eventually made a scientific publication from these documents. This prehistoric monument looked vastly different in prehistoric times than what we see today. The difference between what once was and what we see now is quite staggering. I explained in my Dutch dolmen video that I made about a year ago that most dolmen found in Europe are the skeletal remains of the burial mounds they once were, and this particular monument is a great example to that. If I were to ask some of my longtime viewers who they would guess as the builders of this monument, I guess some of them would say probably the Beaker culture, and they would be right. Of course, once again we speak about the Beaker culture, as we have done so incredibly often in the past already. Sometimes it gets referred to as the Bell Beaker phenomenon due to these ancient people being widespread all over Europe with similar pottery styles in their early days, and similar megalithic architectural cultures. Almost all burial mounds, henges and dolmen I've covered in the past were constructed by people from a Beaker culture, whether they were of the Bell Beaker culture like we've seen in England, Scotland and Ireland, or the funnel beaker culture as we saw in the Netherlands with the Dutch dolmen. Eventually, these beaker cultures would show regionalization over time, creating different styles of pottery showing the distinct differences between the cultures hundreds of years later. Now let's get into the characteristics of this ancient monument. Between 3000 and 2000 BCE, the ancient people of the Bell Beaker culture in the area started placing between 140 and 150 granite orthostats in a vertical arrangement. Within this arrangement was an oval-shaped chamber which was approximately 5 meters in diameter. An eastern entrance led to a passage measuring 21 meters long and between 1.3 and 1.4 meters wide. This led into the chamber. At the entrance of the chamber, archaeologists found a pillar stone of 2 meters in height with a carved serpent and several bowls. It is believed that these carvings were made as protection or as to signify the importance of this sacred monument. The serpent carving could signify the Tagus River as well, as this monument stood near the original flow of the river long ago. Several studies have noticed the similarities between the meanders of the river and the patterns on the pillar. The latest research points to this being the case instead of the previously believed snake pattern. The chamber and passage were covered by a mound of earth and gravel in a similar fashion as the burial mounds in Ireland that we have covered in the past. This particular monument was surrounded by another circular ring that most likely served to uphold the upper mound, possibly due to the sloping of the terrain on which this monument is located. When this monument was first discovered and documented, the archaeologists figured out that it would have most likely been a burial mound with the possible second purpose of being a solar temple. I personally feel that this is highly possible. As we've seen with Newgrange, a monument can definitely serve a dual purpose. Or as we've seen with the Carrowkeel cairns, a triple purpose with the alignments to the setting and rising of the moon, the setting and rising of the sun, and holding burials inside. When the Romans settled near the area in the 3rd century BCE, they started to remove earth and gravel from the mouth, looting the monument and leaving the skeletal structure intact. Archaeologists found this out by the left coins, ceramic pottery and a grinding stone that were discovered. And they discovered the Roman city of Augustobriga on the banks of the river Tagus as well. This city grew to approximately 2,000 inhabitants before it was abandoned. We don't know when it was abandoned and have no clear indication on when the city was established. This is due to the lack of archaeological research. Near the monument, they discovered a dump of artifacts. In this, they found 11 axes, pottery fragments, flint knives, and a copper awl. They also discovered a settlement approximately dating from the same time as the construction of the monument nearby as well. It is believed the mound builders would have lived in this settlement during and most likely after the construction took place. In this settlement, they found hearths, charcoal, and ash stains, and a lot of pottery fragments, mills and stones to sharpen axes and other objects. I've spent many hours trying to locate this ancient settlement of the mound builders, but due to a lack of information, no indication in any of the resources that I've used for this video, and Google Maps not helping me, I eventually had to give up on trying to find out the location of this ancient settlement. To think that for thousands of years this monument stood in its original position, in its original glory, slowly being damaged as the Romans took away the mound, leaving the stones to bear the elements. But this wasn't the worst that happened to this structure, as these stones can survive millennia of weather erosion. No. Unfortunately, this monument had to endure a far worse fate. In 1963, construction on the Valdecañas Dam on the Tagus River started, which filled the Valdecañas reservoir with water and flooded the monument. The nearby Roman town Augustobriga on the opposite bank was flooded as well. Nowadays, the monument is hidden underwater 90% of the time and only visible in times of drought when the water level is low. Because the monument is submerged most of the time, it has rapidly deteriorated. The stones are heavily eroded and the engravings are damaged. In 2019, a drought spell was severe enough for the water to retreat completely, making the monument entirely visible for the first time since it submerged more than 56 years prior. A NASA photograph showed the stones on dry soil, revealing its more than 140 stones. This allowed for the observation of the damage and deterioration of the monument, and actions have been since launched for the conservation of the monument, and a declaration as an asset of cultural interest in order to receive protection of the Spanish historical heritage. Spain is the #1 leading country when it comes to the number of dams and reservoirs in the entirety of Europe. Unfortunately, all these dams and reservoirs meant that many hectares of land would be flooded, including occupied settlements and cultural heritage. The Valdecañas Reservoir didn't just submerge the Neolithic dolmen de Guadalperal, but it also submerged the Roman city Augustobriga, which wasn't even fully excavated when the dam was constructed. Thankfully, the Pórtico de Curia de Talavera la Vieja was preserved and relocated on a hill 6.5 kilometers away from its original location, next to the road overlooking the Valdecañas Reservoir. 4 front columns and 2 side columns for the main facade, with the architrave, and above it is the small rounded arch. This portico was made from granite, and this is the only one of its kind that is preserved in the entire Roman Empire. 3 columns from the La Silla temple were preserved as well on this hill. The city of Augustobriga had walls surrounding the city, providing protection. The center was where the forum was located, with administrative and religious buildings surrounding it. The city used to have an aqueduct about 1 meter high and a system of underground channels that distributed water from a reservoir. Remains of thermal baths and roads have been discovered as well. Most of this knowledge about this ancient city come from documents from José Cornide and Ignacio Hermosilla in the 18th century. Unfortunately, due to the flooding of this ancient city, the archaeological deposits in the soil will have most likely disappeared forever. There is a high number of cultural heritage elements that are currently flooded and submerged in Spanish dammed water. But despite this being a high number, there is no actual complete catalogue on how many exactly. What's even more concerning is the fact that scientific knowledge about the state of conservation and deterioration to which it is exposed is practically non-existent. Besides this, there is a shortage of professionals with scientific training to research these underwater heritage sites. Then there is the fact that these reservoirs are dredged and emptied frequently for repairs of drains and other necessities. The heritage that is submerged in reservoirs therefore is exposed to very sharp and frequent rises and decreases in the water level as a result of these needed repairs. And of course, the alternating periods of rainfall and drought, both increasingly extreme and more frequent, result in the partial or complete outcropping of cultural heritage elements. The main cause of the deterioration of the stones is the salt in the water, that when it dries, it crystallizes. This process is intensified by the wet and dry cycles. The crystallization of salts inside the porous materials, like the stones of the Guadalperal dolmen, lead to their total disintegration and complete loss of material over time. It's been known for a while in the field of heritage science that one of the most important causes of degradation of cultural heritage is the change in the climatic conditions in which they are located. As we've seen with the megalithic temple complex of Menaidra in Malta, they identified the deterioration of the stones due to the salty seawater and sea winds and acid rains. They made the conscious decision of constructing canopies around the structures to preserve them and protect them from these changes in weather elements. Preservation can be done right. Just like in Egypt when the Aswan Dam was constructed, they relocated the great temple of Ramses II and the smaller temples to Nefertari and Hathor, so they wouldn't become submerged under the water. This was done to preserve the structures and protect them from the elements. You can clearly see in this photo the old locations and the new locations. The new locations now hold the precise reconstructions of the original temples. The weather is most likely going to increase in extremes and frequency. If we want to preserve and protect cultural heritage like the Guadalperal dolmen, we need to relocate it in a period of drought. This way, the stones won't become submerged once more. Therefore, the rapid state of deterioration will be slowed down, giving the people enough time to figure out the next step in preservation. Whether that is the construction of a canopy against salty winds or acidic rain, or a new method, that is something scientists need to figure out. As for the Augusto Briga settlement, there is most likely the need for a dike to protect the ancient city from becoming submerged again in the future. That way, the archaeologists are able to start carrying out excavations in hopes they can find and preserve artifacts of the ancient settlement. Of course, these solutions don't take the extremes of climate change in mind, but they could at the very least slow down the deterioration and disintegration of these structures. Since the Guadalperal dolmen became completely visible in 2019, there is more advocacy to preserve the monuments, and actions have been launched for its conservation. The Raíces de Peraleda Association is requesting its recovery from the appreciable deterioration. This could be positive news, although all we can do is hope they take action soon and that it won't be too late. But with that said, you've reached the end of this video. If you enjoyed watching, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to see more of these kind of videos, and click the bell icon for notifications every time I upload. If you haven't seen my previous videos yet, then what are you doing? Click the card in the upper right corner, the link in the description down below, or click one of the cards in the end card. I'd also like to thank my patrons, Richard Barry, Scott, James, Floyd, Prabhu DC, and NGC6543. Thank you for watching. Let's hope that we can make a change in preservation of these ancient monuments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! The treasure? Unknown. No. Whew!